Alix got this from an auction. She brought it. She's not sure what to do with it. It's a Procumbens nana, an older tree. Before I decided to do a quick little video, we talked a little bit about the bark. This is a older tree, 15 to 20 years old, I would say. Was staked up. She got it at an auction. Probably the other owner was having an issue with not knowing exactly what to do. It doesn't have a lot of, it has reverse taper up top. It doesn't have a ton of movement. It's very typical of a staked Procumbens nana. I'm going to, with her permission, we've talked about what to do. I'm going to make a decision for her. There's a lot of dead on this tree, stuff that hasn't been worked yet. There's a couple options that we talked about. There's a front, you can kind of see it right here. We decided this was going to be cut off anyway, so let me kind of show it to you a little better. So we talked about this is the front, and eliminating this whole thing and making this a cascading branch. We also talked about this is the front, which is what we decided right here, because this has got just a really beautiful base. Even though it's a Literati, it's a nice base for a Literati. It's got some interesting deadwood that needs to be worked and carved. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on this. And what we decided on, because we don't have super thick conflicting branching, is we're going to carve this other side and we're going to cut it off completely. Alix has had this for a while. She's been fertilizing it. It's the right time of year to do this. I like to create a lot of deadwood in the summer, but we take a lot of foliage off in the winter. We've committed to a line on your cascading branch. We've committed to a definitive structure. We are going to wire this out, shape it. This is your cascading branch that we're going to wire and shape. We're going to cut a lot of this dead, and we're also going to take this whole back, shorten it even more, and do a lot of carving on this. When I say carving, you can use carving tools, hand tools, or Dremel, or power tools, but frankly I like to use a lot of hand tools, especially with smaller stuff like this. What I'm going to do is just shorten this quite a bit, but I just want to show, I'm kind of doing this for Alix's as well. This is what I was talking about. You just split them, take the tips and you just split them with your concave cutters. Sometimes you mash them, and you take your gin pliers and you pull them up. That'll expose a lot of the wood fibers. You can roll it so it appears. It just gets you started. All of this is going to be dyed back anyway, so doing this doesn't hurt the future tree. We just have a bit of reverse taper here that we're going to slowly kind of carve away over the next couple years once this guy gets established and gets reset. I am going to strip this now so we can kind of delineate your live and dead sections on the tree. Thin this out visually, because it's in the back. This is going to be in the back of the tree, so it's really not that important, but we still want it to appear natural, right? And deadwood is literally, I love it. It's a whole process. There's a lot of good videos on YouTube on how to do it. All of this needs to be stripped and carved. You don't want to have cut ends. Come in there with your gin pliers and pulling the wood fibers back to make it look like it broke off, or maybe a hurricane came by, or a tornado, or age. If you want it to appear like it's been done decades ago, you can even take a torch to it and then brush it so it looks like it's much older deadwood. And then you tie this in to the deadwood that you have here. See, now it kind of tells a story.
Wow.
And then you can continue this down the trunk and carve some of this away so you get rid of this reverse taper that you have up top, because you do have a bit of reverse taper. Procumbens nanas do this. This is just how they grow. You get 4 or 5 branches that are all coming from the same location, and that's just what happened. This whole issue was because both of these branches were coming from the same location. They both were the only foliage that was still alive, and as they grew, they slowly thickened it up there. It's just something you get to deal with. Next thing I'm going to do is come through here and cut anything that's dead, that's really weak, but you need all this foliage. Junipers get their strength from their foliage. If this wasn't January, I wouldn't be cutting it like this. I can't cut any more of this foliage off. That's a lot of foliage that we've taken off. At this point, I'm going to just leave everything that's here and wire it, or it needs to be wired. But I'll cut it back. Get rid of any of the dead tips or anything that's overtly wrong that makes it difficult to wire. You know, Literatis are, it's a very visceral style. People either love or hate them. But traditionally they don't have much foliage on the bottom 80%, although there's some that break the rules. They don't, Literati have their own rules. They traditionally don't have a lot of foliage. They tend to be a little bit more sparse. They don't have to have much taper. They traditionally have just interesting movement. Though sometimes they have taper. Sometimes they have funky movement. I've seen some just really exceptional trees.
Does it need to be repotted?
So it's a good question. When you have a tree that you've taken a ton of foliage off, especially if you're going to wire it, I probably wouldn't repot this till next year. If you look at the roots, so if you have a brick of roots, you could take the top half or the bottom half off, put fresh mix and let it grow, but you don't want to come in here and cut a ton of this and put it in a finished pot once you've taken all this foliage off, because you've weakened the tree. You've taken a tree and you've taken a lot of the foliage off. You want this to recover. Ideally with the juniper, it's 1 insult per season, right? We're in January, so the next season would be April. At that point, you're a little bit too late to repot because it's so darn hot here. I would probably, like I said, take this out, maybe take the bottom half off. It looks like it's in a pseudo bonsai soil. There's a lot of aggregates in here, so you ideally will have good roots closer to the trunk, that's a beautiful thing, because a lot of times you get these in there in regular potting soil. Because you got this at a bonsai auction, they might have repotted it, which that's a beautiful thing. You'll have a lot of feeders closer to the trunk, but our whole goal is to get feeders close to the trunk, because this would be ideally probably put in a round pot, and it's going to be a fairly small pot,
like a flat one,
about the thickness of the trunk, a round container, maybe a drum pot, maybe something that's would be interesting. This is right in the way of your trunk line. This needs to be adjusted and wired. This is a goofy transition right here that needs to be addressed, carved and worked, but carving that top back is really going to help with the bulge that you had up top here. Visually, it'll make it appear much more feminine. You'll be able to see the nice live vein as you slowly work this deadwood and the shari over the seasons. I think this would be a really pretty tree, but you have to wire it and shape it to really show it off. That's going to be another video.